Okay, so I'm just going to tell the story now. And if you don't want to listen to it and just get the main takeaways from this, I'll link the timestamp to the conclusions and the big picture ideas that have come from this experience somewhere. So here's the story. I want to get a new phone because my current phone, the Samsung Note 8, has a cracked screen and the battery doesn't hold a charge like it used to, in the sense that I don't always make it through the day. And whenever I'm using my phone, I really have to consider how much battery power I'm using, because I have to worry about whether or not I can make it to the end of the day if I keep using my phone. So new phones are very expensive, and I thought, why don't I try looking on Marketplace, where I can find newish phones for a lower price and save some money. And now I thought, I'm pretty savvy when it comes to looking for scams and making sure sellers are reputable and they're legitimate. But apparently not. I found a phone being listed, the S21 Ultra, for $500. And I think, wow, that's a really good deal. It's not an absurdly good deal compared to other listings that were put on, but it's better than the others. And I was looking around. I saw his profile, and the profile looked legitimate. He had friends, he had posts from before, he's got a job, and this was my introductory message. Hey, I like to buy this. Yeah, I can Venmo this much, but just for protection, can you send me some ID with the phone in the background to show you aren't a scammer? Sorry, I just got to cover my bases since scamming is so big on Marketplace. And I'm aware that scams are a big thing on Marketplace, but I figured at the time that, hey, if I have a picture of not only the object, but the object next to an ID, I have evidence of who this person is, where they live, and the fact that they actually own the object. So if things ever go bad, I would have somebody to go back to, and it would also prove that this person had it. And I feel like people are a lot less likely to scam if they have their public identity displayed. Now, I'm going to keep this person's identity anonymous online, not because I like the guy or want to protect him, but I don't think being vengeful or something like this is the right thing or appropriate thing to do right now. Maybe it's just the culture I've grown up in, but I think doxing is still wrong to do here. The purpose of this video at this point is just for education, and I hope that nobody gets scammed the way that I did. Now, he pressures me and says, well, I can take that picture for you, but with the phone and the ID, but I'm at work right now, so I won't be able to necessarily give it to you now, but maybe later when I get back home, if it hasn't sold by then. So as a result of this, the pressure makes me cave in. I go, okay, why don't you just give me your ID? This person's unlikely to scam me, right? If I know their name and their details and where they live, and I could always send that to the police if they scammed me or something like that. Well, he sends me the SID, picture is correct, the details are correct, and so he passes all the usual checks because his profile is legitimate and he has an ID, and the pictures are seemingly not replicated anywhere else online, so it seems like he actually has the product. He mentions that his Venmo is stuck, so he won't be able to use it. So I propose using PayPal, and PayPal is great because they actually have this option called goods and services, where if a good isn't delivered, then you can contact PayPal and they'll refund you the money. However, he mentions that he doesn't want to use goods and services because he's been scammed before by a buyer, where a buyer will say that they didn't receive the object and the seller gets the money taken away from them, but the buyer keeps the object. And how they do that is the buyer just says that, hey, I never received the object, or the object is not what is shown. And then PayPal will bring the money back to the buyer and the seller loses all their money. And I thought, okay, that's fair, fine. You don't want to do PayPal. He suggests doing something called PayPal Friends and Family, which doesn't have the same buyer protections. And I thought that this is not okay. I don't really trust it. It's sketchy in that sense. But throughout all of our discussions, he provided a lot of assurances that he wasn't trying to scam me. And this really makes my guard go down because he passed all of the usual things you would look for in really obvious scams. I guess at this point, you might be screaming a few things. And one of them might be, why didn't you use Facebook Marketplace payment, where you can go and buy things directly through Facebook? Because that has buyer protection. The answer is because they charge the buyer extra shipping, taxes, and I think a service charge. And it tends to scale with how expensive the object is. And since it was already $500, it was a lot of money, but this was very penny wise, dollar full for me, since you know that this ultimately led to a scam and me losing all of the money. So obviously, in hindsight, I would have chosen to pay this premium. So this is a big lesson in hindsight. Don't use Venmo, Zelle, or any app that doesn't have buyer protections unless you're willing to risk losing all the money that you transfer. So obviously, in hindsight, I would have paid these add-ons that buying through marketplace charges. I now have a personal rule where I won't use these kinds of apps without buyer protection on payments that are over a certain size to avoid losing this much money again in the future. I probably would have bought directly through Facebook Marketplace in hindsight as well if I wasn't in a rush to get this transaction completed, because I was rushing to work at the same time and I didn't read his message all that well that he suggested it. Since you guys know that this is ultimately a scam, I guess in hindsight, he didn't know that buyer protection exists on Facebook Marketplace directly. At least that would be my assumption, knowing everything that I know now. I know this video is already long, but here is a tangent just to emphasize that using Facebook Marketplace actually saved me another time. I tried to buy another of this phone model for a friend who wanted to buy this new phone, but lived far away from this good listing, and I could bring it to them the next time I visited. Anyways, I bought the item directly through Facebook Marketplace, and this person made a shipping label to make me think that the product was shipped. But fortunately, US Postal Services can tell you whether or not the package was actually dropped off at the mailing center or the label was just created. So this person was trying to trick me, but I could tell, and I contacted Facebook. And as a result of this, they gave me a full refund, so I didn't lose any money. So that was good. The only thing costing me was time. So again, using something with buyer's insurance is definitely a good idea when you're going through these things. Even if it costs a little bit more, the peace of mind is a lot better. And as you can see, even when people give you IDs and reassurances, there are no guarantees. Okay, back to the main story. So all this back and forth takes a lot longer than I wanted to. So I end up having to juggle this kind of conversation between seeing patients. He mentions that I can send the money to his partner instead because his partner's account is working on Venmo, and I think, great, even more ID to leverage if things go bad. So I'm an idiot and I send him the money. He disappears and my heart drops, but I can't even think about it while I'm at work. Fortunately, he gets back to me. He asks for a screenshot that confirms that I paid him, and I sent it to him, and he says that it wasn't received. And I go, wait, what? At this point, I think that's just an honest issue. So we troubleshoot and he tells me he's working on it too. He goes on saying that if he was scamming me, he would have just blocked me and left. And I figure, fine, maybe there is some kind of issue here. So the back and forth goes on for a few days. I contact Venmo several times, and they continue to reassure me that the money went through. They confirmed to me that the money is 100% through. So I tell him that Venmo has confirmed that the payment went through and everything like that, but he still says that the money has not arrived. And this goes back and forth several times. I try to ultimately get a call with him to maybe try and sort things out over the phone instead of playing the phone tag that we are doing, because he's not great at responding to messages and it's hard. He agrees, but ultimately when I try and call him, he disappears and leaves me waiting and wasting my time. Throughout all this time, he was kind of unresponsive, but I thought that it was just him kind of being inconsiderate. Anyways, at this point, I am very suspicious because Venmo has confirmed to me that the payment did go through. And when I asked further to Venmo support whether or not that the seller had actually reached out to them, Venmo confirmed that they had not actually reached out to Venmo. So this is very suspicious. In medicine, we call this the differential. A lot of times symptoms can be caused by many things, but you have to do the workup to see if it is the common thing. Often the worst thing is less likely than something else, and you need to test to see if the more common thing and less bad thing is really the case here. Here, I did that by contacting Venmo and then seeing if the seller had contacted Venmo. Venmo confirmed that the payment went through and the seller had never contacted them. Additionally, they confirmed for me that they weren't able to reverse the payment anymore because the seller had already transferred the money from their Venmo account and deposited it into their bank. So this makes me think that not only could it be that they didn't know that the money was being put into their Venmo account and not their bank account, but they actually actively saw that the money was put in and they transferred it out into their bank account. So as a result of this outcome, I believe I'm being scammed. So I figure, why not give one final chance for them to prove that they aren't scamming me by calling at a specific time where we can group call Venmo and see if there really is an issue. I try to arrange this phone call, but every time we go to have a meeting, he doesn't answer. He then tells me that I can try and arrange with him, but at any given point, who knows what he'll be doing? And he just doesn't answer. And he says, hey, why don't you just call me and try calling me? Because that's the best way to go about things. Except I've tried calling him several times at different times and he doesn't answer. So this is very frustrating and it wastes my time. Anyways, so at this point, I'm contacting Venmo to see what I should be doing. And they suggest that I go to my local law enforcement and file a report, and then Venmo can help out and assist the law enforcement. So at this point, I go to file a report at my local police station. I also ask, does it matter whether or not I know the details of the perpetrator of the scam, since I know where they live and I know their name and I know their details? And they respond that they're not going to go knocking on the door because of this kind of thing. So this is kind of surprising, but I figure, okay, I guess this dispute could be handled with less physical confrontation. Fine. I send the report to Venmo. Nothing happens for a week or so. I message Venmo if they can go further, and they say that they can only help me if the police reaches out to them. I go back to the police department and they mention that for these kinds of reports, it typically just is done for insurance. They mention that just because you think that you have an address and details if they are scamming, a lot of scammers fake this stuff, and if a detective ever picks this up and follows up with it, you'll be contacted. I ask if they can reach out to Venmo for support, since Venmo will have their bank account info, which could be another source of info, and they say that these scammers open and close accounts too. I really have my doubts that this is the case, where the scammer is faking IDs and bank accounts, since the partner's Venmo account is also linked to their day-to-day business, but it seems like the police are unwilling to pursue this further. Anyways, so the police have basically told me that my money is unlikely to come back to me by contacting them, and so they say contact my bank. Venmo shuts down the account that I reported, and he contacts me back with the same story of not getting the money and contacting them, but I really don't have anything more to say to him at this point. I contact my bank. They say that even though I was deceived, since I authorized the transfer, they can't reverse it. The advice I was given was that in the future, if I'm going to do these transfers, I should do it through credit cards because you can dispute these claims a lot more. I think this makes sense, and I've heard of this sort of thing before, but I don't know the specifics, but I guess it's a good move if you're forced to do it. So, in conclusion, these are the takeaways. 1. Don't be penny wise and dollar fool. If you aren't comfortable losing all the money in a classified type ad, use Facebook Marketplace and pay the premium, or PayPal, or something that just gives you buyer's insurance for comfort of mind and so you don't lose all your money. 2. Just because you do your background research and their profile is legitimate looking and you have the details even down to where they live, their name, and possibly their bank details, it still won't protect you in getting your money back if they choose to scam you. 3. If you're really in this sort of situation where you need to use things without buyer's protection, perhaps using a credit card might help, but I can't confirm whether or not this is actually any better. So that's just the advice I got from my bank. I hope you learned something from this mistake. I am truthfully upset and angry by this, I guess, but it's not as if feeling these things will change the reality of the situation, so I figured the only thing to do now was to write this and post it. Again, I really wanted to believe this guy wasn't scamming, but all the signs have pointed to it. Hopefully, it protects somebody else, because when I was looking the other day, this guy listed the phone again under an alternate account, so someone is likely to get scammed by him again, and hopefully by watching this video, you won't fall prey to similar situations. And, well, if this video wasn't helpful to you, I hope it at least gave you a bit of entertainment, because sometimes joy can be created from suffering. But that's a topic for another day. Anyways, until next time, take care. Bye.